For at least the last 50 years, they've been working actively behind the scenes, in the shadows, trying to move our people and our culture in a direction that was designed to destroy us. Someone needed to find out the truth of what had happened to our country. Could all of these very specific goals have been accomplished by accident? Or was there something there, under the surface, intentionally rotting away America's culture? I decided to go and get the facts from some of my favorite writers and speakers around the country. These are a few of the questions I asked them.
The common myth is that communism is dead, but there are more Communist Party members in the world today than there ever have been.
One of the things the communists are doing worldwide is not using that name. And so what we have is people with some of the same ideas masquerading in the United States under a variety of names. They're even trying to get away from the word liberal to describe them, and they're trying to call themselves progressives.
If you go to the American Communist Party website, all of the programs and policies they support are progressive.
So progressives are anything from a hardcore liberal to a communist to a socialist. They all call themselves progressives, and they all have broadly the same values and work together.
J. Edgar Hoover is called the masters of deceit. And a good magician waves one hand in the air while he's doing his dirty work with the other hand. And while everybody's saying communism has died, they moved through much of Africa.
Communism is resurgent in South Africa.
Into South and Central America.
Right now, 6 countries in Latin America are now communistic.
We have communist China, we have Cuba, North Korea, we have Vietnam.
It still dominates behind the scene in Russia. It's still very strong in Eastern Europe. It is strong in the EU. It is strong in virtually every country in the world.
Whittaker Chambers said, communism succeeds because most people that promote communist causes are not communist. The useful idiots, that Lenin called them, it gives it an air of legitimacy it would never have if it was identified with communists and communism.
So why has it been so easy for them to get people on the left who aren't communists to push forward their agenda? Once I looked at the political scale, it all started to make sense. On the far left, you have 100% government, and on the far right, zero government. Anarchy is no government and doesn't make sense at all. On the far left, you have socialism, communism, and Nazism, all systems that have a socialist form of government with only slight variances between them. Traditionally, Republicans were slightly to the right of center, and Democrats were slightly to the left. In recent years, though, through the radical influence of the media, Hollywood, and the multitude of Marxist professors in our universities, both parties have slid to the left, with the Democrats going so far they have openly joined hand in hand with the radicals. That's why they all work together. All the groups on the left now have the same goal, a socialist America.
I thought we were over communism. I thought, okay, we won that battle. The Berlin Wall came down. Ronald Reagan won the day. We've got to look and see how he fought this, because we're fighting it again on American soil. Not hostilely attacking us like we feared in the Cold War. It is from within.
And it has no opposition, none. And that's the frightening thing.
I think it's pretty clear to see communism isn't dead. They now disguise it by calling it different names, but the ideas behind it are alive and well. Almost 1.5 billion people still live in openly communistic countries. But unfortunately, most of us in America who are under the age of 50 have no idea what communism means to the people who live under it. So my next question was, what's so bad about communism?
Communism is so evil.
It's a completely tyrannical system.
The whole history of communism is one of mass murder.
Tens of millions of people brutally murdered by the communists.
The mass murder of more people in times of peace in all the wars of history combined.
Each of those countries where they have taken control, millions have been murdered.
When you're asking for what is the legacy of Marxism, it is the greatest killing machine in all of human history.
We're talking a congressional record, 135 million dead due to communism. I think the real number is probably, when you add in abortions, over 500 million.
The rulers lived rather well, and at the same time you had all kinds of people who were enslaved, put in prison, oppressed, so you had really the opposite of what they claimed was going to be the result of their revolutionary activities.
You would think that if the 20th century was the most murderous of centuries, everyone would say, let's find out why. And the truth is, you can't even ask the question. It is verboten to ask the question because the ideas that brought about that mass murder are still being taught in our public schools today.
I think one of the reasons this has happened is because there's so much confusion surrounding the word communism. Technically speaking, communism is simply the final phase and goal of socialism. And socialism is best described by two words: big government. Government controls almost everything, and they use this power to take things by force from one person and give it to another. The liberals in America sincerely believe that this isn't evil at all. It is what will finally make things fair and just. There's only one problem that pulls some of us away from this wonderful utopian vision: history. From history we see that whether it was Hitler's National Socialism or Stalin's Soviet Socialism, socialism by whatever name and in all its forms is the ultimate evil. Sooner or later, it destroys everything in its path: law, morality, family, prosperity, productivity, education, incentive, and finally life itself. The problem with socialism is that it creates the conditions for a Stalin or a Hitler to come to power. And that's why communism has such relevance today. It's the final destination on the road we're traveling. Friedrich Nietzsche tried to convince the world that God was dead. Charles Darwin tried to prove that humans are simply part of the animal kingdom. And Karl Marx realized that the philosophies of Nietzsche and Darwin would legitimize his own philosophy of communism. He knew their ideas would justify the brutality and slaughter that would be necessary to implement communism worldwide. It was in March of 1883, Karl Marx, the father of modern-day communism, died. The assumption that communism would die with him was a logical one, since only 9 people attended his funeral. In October of that same year in London, England, a group was forming called the Fabian Socialist Society.
The Fabian Socialists decided that they were going to socialize the world incrementally. They called it socialism by evolution instead of Marxist socialism by revolution.
It always worked in tandem with the communists. Some Fabians were also communists. There was a bit of interchange of membership.
The Fabian Socialists are slowly but surely bringing about the socialization of the world. Europe is pretty well done. They are now working in Latin America. Latin America is not just socialistic in many countries. They're all already Marxist. You have hardcore Marxists in Venezuela, in Nicaragua. El Salvador just went communistic, and of course Fidel is sitting right there laughing at this whole thing. And we haven't even figured this thing out yet. We don't even know there's a red plague coming up to meet us. We think that we're just going to watch the cartoons on Saturday morning and everything will be fine.
They had a lot to do with bad stuff happening.
There are two things I found that gave me a good idea where the Fabians were really coming from. First of all, their symbol was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And secondly, George Bernard Shaw, who was a leader in the Fabians for almost 50 years, said, quote, "I am a communist, but not a member of the Communist Party. Stalin is a first-rate Fabian. I am one of the founders of Fabianism, and as such, very friendly to Russia," unquote.
The Fabians eventually beget the Students for a Democratic Society, which beget the Weather Underground, which beget basically the social changes that have happened in America in the last 40 years.
Many of the SDS members from the 1960s still have an incredible influence on the direction our country is heading. One is the Reverend Jim Wallace, who was president of SDS when he was a student at Michigan State University.
And yet today, he is the spiritual advisor to the President of the United States. They've been friends for many years. They go back to Chicago and the Chicago politics crowd. And during the Vietnam War, he was rooting for the Viet Cong to beat the United States Army. And when they did, he just couldn't believe it. He said it was one of the happiest days in his life.
And another leader in the Students for a Democratic Society and founder of the Weather Underground is William Ayers, who has been a longtime friend and neighbor of President Obama. It came out in 2009 that Obama's book, Dreams from My Father, was even written by Ayers. So the influence from the Fabian Socialist Society goes right into the White House. The next group I found that has seriously impacted America's culture is the Frankfurt School.
The Frankfurt School was a sort of an outpost in America of European socialism.
Willy Munzenberg, with a few other Bolsheviks, founded the Frankfurt School.
The two leading members are Herbert Marcuse and Franz Neumann. Franz Neumann was, in fact, a Soviet agent.
Their entire purpose was to stand the entire educational system of the West, and the United States in particular, on its head.
Bertrand Russell, who worked with the Frankfurt School, said, "By using psychological techniques to teach the children, we will be able to produce, quote, an unshakable conviction that snow is black," unquote.
They established a school here.
With the help of John Dewey. He helps bring these German intellectuals to America in 1933, drop them down at Princeton, Berkeley, Brandeis, to go after education and media.
Included in those goals were the teaching of homosexuality and sexuality to children, the promotion of excessive drinking, and destruction of religion in the United States. That was a big one.
And they basically started the social rot.
Willy Munzenberg said, "We are going to make the West so corrupt it stinks."
I love spending time with my family, July 4th, baseball, and apple pie, and my mind can't even comprehend that there were groups of intellectuals back in the 1930s plotting and planning how they could make America so corrupt it stinks.